What's up, folks? Low-key nerd here. It's probably been quite a long time since you've heard me say that. You're probably wondering where on earth has he been? And the answer to that is not playing Overwatch, number one. Number two, I've been playing a game called Warhammer online, specifically the Return of Reckoning private server that was spun up a few years ago. Now, Warhammer is a very old game. It's a PvP-based MMO, and it's quite fun. So I've been playing that and enjoying it a lot. And I felt the motivation, again, to make some videos. And you all know I typically don't like to make videos unless I'm good at something. And I've finally gotten good enough at this game where I think I can speak to some of the topics. So this first video is going to be short and sweet, specific to a class that I play called the Witch Elf. The Witch Elf is like an assassin, stealthy character of sorts, general locked to the female dark elf race. And yeah, it has a lot of flexibility in its build set. I'm gonna give you 3 builds today. We're not gonna get too much into depth into these builds. Like, we're not gonna get into my character makeup, we're not gonna get into my rotations, although I'll show my skill bars and stuff. Instead, I'm just gonna tell you what these specs are off the top of my head. I also normally use a script for this stuff, but I wanted to just, off the dome this time. So, the first build we're gonna talk about is I would say, a less common build. It is the Sacrificial Stab build. And the Sacrificial Stab build relies on auto attack damage. And so for your tactics, you're gonna be running a set of tactics that are built around that auto attack damage. So the first thing you wanna pick up, and you'll see this in a lot of the builds, is, I think it's called Taste of Blood. Taste of Blood. You wanna grab Taste of Blood, and then you're gonna wanna grab Mark of Marathi, or Marathi, or however you wanna pronounce it. And Mark of Marathi stacks with the buff that Sacrificial Stab gives. So look into those skill descriptions. We're not going to read into all of it today. The other thing you're going to want to pick up is, of course, Increased Pain. Increased Pain is a very standard tactic to run on the Witch Elf. It increases your critical hit damage, so you're going to grab that. And then for the fourth tactic, it kind of gets interesting. I have a little cheat sheet on my lap here. So the first thing you might consider is running Sacrifices Rewarded. And Sacrifices Rewarded it's probably one of the best tactics in the game, number one, especially for like a little bit more of a defensive buffer. Basically gives you an absorb shield every 3 seconds, and absorb, as we know, is one of the most OP things in the game. So you could run Sacrifices Rewarded. If you want to go full damage, you could put on Flanking, or you could pick any other damage tactic that you think works good for you. So that's the Sacrificial Stab build. Start with that. The next build I'm going to talk about is the City build, and the City build is specific to a certain role a Witch Elf could play in the city. It's not the only role a Witch Elf could play, but it is a role. And this build is really all around on your knees. So you're going to be a morale drain and a morale pump for your team. And running this spec, you're still going to run Taste of Blood. You're still going to run Taste of Blood. You're going to pick up another damage tactic. I like Frenzied Mayhem the most. And then, a little bit different here than the other builds, you can run Broad Severing, which makes your slice an AoE slice. And then on top of your on your knees, it'll end up giving you a decent amount of AoE damage. Like, you can, if you're a good Witch Elf player, you can easily keep up with some of the average Choppas or Marauders or whatever, and probably surpass them a lot of the time. So you could do Broad Severing, or you could do something else. You could pick up a different damage tactic there too. And then the other thing you're going to want to pick up is actually in the Path of Agony skill tree, which is the, let me look at my cheat sheet. Swift Blades. You're going to want to pick up Swift Blades. And Swift Blades, what it does is give you a 10% parry and like unlimited AP. And that's a pretty big deal in City because the fights are typically pretty extended. And that's just going to give you a longer uptime, which then increases the amount of damage you do overall. So consider those tactic mix up. The big thing that you want for that build, though, is on your knees. And then, of course, grab Black Lotus Blade from the Path of Suffering tree. So, on to the last build. And the last build is the Witch Brute build. And some of you probably know, if you watched my stream, I was sleeping on this build for a while. But I'm going to tell you why. It's because, like, on paper, it doesn't seem that good. It really doesn't. But the reason it is so good is because we're in a meta that is an armor meta. And Witch Brew really doesn't give a shit about armor. In fact, much of the Path of Suffering tree doesn't give a shit about armor. It's not hitting armor resistance, right? So, at least some of the damage isn't hitting armor resistance, it's hitting corporal. So the idea is that Witch Brew, especially for like 6v6 competitive, is probably your best bet. And the Witchbrew build, pretty similar to before. Again, I'll show you my skill trees and stuff, but the tactics you're gonna run with this, Taste of Blood again. It seems like that is just typical, right? Flanking, for this one specifically, pick up flanking, increase pain again. And then again, for the fourth tactic, similar to the sacrificial stab build, it gets a little interesting. So you could go sacrifices rewarded and pick up that absorb shield, or you could just go full on deeps, pick up another damage tactic, pick up an AP tactic if you think you just can't keep up with the AP drains. A lot of times in ranked, if I'm up against an Archmage that I know is going to be draining my AP, I might run my AP drain kiss and also the AP tactic just so I have more uptime. So, you know, float those around, play around with them a bit. But I'm going to cut this video here. I've already talked too much between all my pauses and stuff. We'll dig into some of these builds and Witch Elf gameplay in another video. Thank you all.